I'd like to introduce you to someone who maybe you've heard of. His name is Phil Darrow, and he has a talk out there called Against Answer Getting. And I want to just quote him a little bit because I think it pertains to everything that we're doing. And I'm going to invite you today that through all that I talk about and the leaders in your breakout sessions talk about, I'm going to invite you to wonder how what he talks about influences everything that we're doing. So, Phil Darrow was one of the guys in the TIM study. And one of the things that they did in the TIM study is they wandered around the world and they videoed classrooms in 8th grade and Algebra 1 classrooms. And they videoed teachers interacting with students, and then they studied those videos. And in a huge way, they compared Japanese classrooms to American classrooms. They also videoed German classrooms, a bunch of others. But for the most part, he found something really interesting when they looked at ordinary to extraordinary teachers in Japan and ordinary to extraordinary teachers in America. That there was one thing, and it's interesting because he said it took him years to figure out. But a lot of people were looking at these videos, and this is one thing that he figured out that I think he's got something here. To where he said, if you look at an American teacher, most American teachers have the same goal. And the goal of an American teacher is they say to themselves, here is the problem of the day. And if this is the problem of the day, how am I going to teach my students how to solve this problem, how to get an answer to this problem? So sort of answer getting. I'm going to help my students answer these problems. Now, you might say, duh, of course that's our goal, right? We're teaching math. We need to help kids answer problems. That's what we sort of do as a math teacher. So if that's kind of the American, sort of set that over here, that the American goal of a teacher is I look at the problem of the day and I say, how can I help my students answer these problems? And then he said, I noticed that when I looked at Japanese teachers, I noticed that Japanese teachers had more the goal of saying, here is the problem of the day. How can I use this problem to help my students that as they solve it, they learn the math necessary to solve problems like this? Those may sound way similar. Let me say this again. The American teacher sort of says to themselves, if this is the problem of the day, how can I help my students get answers to these problems? And the Japanese teacher tends to say, how can I use this problem of the day that as my students are solving this problem, they learn the math they need to solve problems like these? That's actually a rather huge shift. It's a rather very distinct difference. Sometimes teachers in America will say to me, yeah, but Pam, I could just have kids do this and it works. To which I say, is that what it's about, getting an answer to this problem? And they'll go, yeah, we're trying to get an answer to this problem. To which then I wonder, where's the mathematizing? Is the kid mathematizing in that procedure that you just did, that thing that you just told them to do, maybe that trick that you just showed them? They're getting answers. And Phil Darrow would actually say that those answer getting techniques are actually pretty reliable. Like I can teach kids this procedure to do, and the kids get the right answer on Tuesday. Like they can all, it takes me maybe a couple of days, and then the kids have learned this procedure, and they're actually all getting right answers. It's pretty reliable. It would take me much longer to help the kids mathematize this content, to help them look at how can we actually use these problems to learn this content, really to mathematize their world, to create relationships and connections in their heads so that they can then answer problems like this. That will take much longer, and it will be much less reliable. Because I'll have some kids that as we do that problem to learn that math through that problem, I will have some students who will catch on fairly quickly. I'll have other students where it's very confusing to them and they're very unsure and they're on uneven ground. I had some participants in my group yesterday thank me in the evaluation for allowing them the opportunity to be in disequilibrium, to feel uncomfortable and know that it is okay. That it is okay to say, whoa, I'm a little unclear on that. Because in the process of working out your unclearness, that's where learning occurs. Learning occurs when we are in disequilibrium, when we are slightly off balance. And we say to ourselves, I'm not real clear on that. And we work out the meaning. Working out the meaning means we are creating new synapses in our brains. We are literally firing neurons and we're creating new connections and we're strengthening those connections. And that's learning occurring. So if I'm the American teacher, I might look at this idea of, that feels unreliable. I've got some kids that are doing it rather quickly. I've got some kids that are really confused. I've got some kids in between. That feels like a classroom management nightmare. I don't know that that doesn't feel like a thing to do. Whereas over here, I can do this very reliable thing and I can just help them get answers and it feels, well, I've done my job. I don't have anybody insecure. I don't have anybody in disequilibrium. Nobody's feeling uneasy over here. That must be a better world. But in reality, what we're not doing is mathematizing. We're answer getting. It's all about getting an answer. Now, to be clear, and he actually says this, don't quote me as I don't want right answers. Do I want right answers? I absolutely want right answers, but not at the cost of mathematizing. So I'm going to sort of, one more thing about Phil Darrow. So he also says they noticed that they could look at a teacher in Japan who was actually getting really good results, but it was a fairly average teacher getting really good results. And then they weighed that up against really good teachers in America who were getting mediocre results. And that really stymied them, which led him to this idea of, what is our goal? And the goals were drastically different. In other words, we have the same range of teachers in Japan as we have in the US. We have, he uses the word dullards. We have sort of dullard teachers, not so good teachers, to really excellent teachers, and we have the same range of teachers in Japan. But we are finding that it doesn't even kind of matter how good the teacher you are, but if your goal is to help kids mathematize, you're actually getting better results than a better teacher whose goal is all about answer getting.